Welcome to the Culturally Informed Strengths Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Danny Almeida, also known as the Strengths Professor. This podcast explores the intersection of Clifton strengths, identity, culture, and context, and how those things can shape our experiences and expressions of our strengths. Through conversations with guests from higher education and beyond, we'll explore what authentic Clifton strengths can look like across different identities, experiences, professions, and communities. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Culturally Informed Strengths Podcast. Today, we have a returning guest who I'm excited to have back, Dr. Nisa Morey from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And today's episode is not about a single strength, but it's about all of Nisa's strengths in the context of her Asian identity, which we'll get into in a moment. But first, I'm going to ask Nisa to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nisa Morey. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently a full time lecturer at Cal Poly SLO in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I was part of the early career faculty cohort from 2023 to 2024. My top 10 strengths are responsibility, discipline, harmony, belief, arranger, input, analytical, developer, relator, and maximizer. And some identities that I feel are going to be really important in our conversation today are that I'm a first generation Thai American. I am also a native Texan, and I'm an eldest daughter.
All right. So, first question. How has your Asian identity shaped the way you see and use your strengths in academia?
So I am always trying to achieve things, and I always am trying to change my strategy to accomplish my goals. In the case of academia, I think my goals are really focused on teaching and being an effective teacher. And I'm never satisfied with the results that I see. And unfortunately, the results to me are always positive feedback. So if I don't get good student reviews or good feedback from my colleagues, I feel like I am a failure and that I need to keep changing the ways that I teach and the ways that I interact with people. Feedback is especially important with all of this. And it's important because I want to make that harmony happen. It's always my responsibility as well as an instructor, and I take that from work to home, and I feel like I carry that a lot. And I think that as a child of immigrants, but more importantly, being the eldest child of immigrants, I always carry responsibility. Like I feel like I have to be the one who takes care of the things. If I don't, then everything is going to fall apart.
Hmm.
Um yeah. And I guess too that like how I interact with my students and my colleagues, it's I guess in line with being an Asian female, a quiet Asian female, and somebody who's very docile. And how I interact is also a result of wanting to always be part of the model minority or fit into the model minority myth for Asian Americans.
Yeah. I heard a lot of your strengths come through in that answer. So, responsibility, of course, as you mentioned, discipline as well. We had an episode on discipline,
Mhm.
and some of this sounds very familiar to some of the people on that episode too, in terms of like, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done, especially as the eldest as well. And then harmony, of course, like you want to keep everybody happy. I
Right.
hear developer too, like with the feedback. I think there's a bit of it there too. If you can don't get feedback that people are developing or that, your students are learning, then that's going to come into
Yeah.
play as well. Yeah, and then maximizer is also a perfectionist kind of strength where, it can always be better, it can always be better, right? Is what maximizer sort of provides too. So they're all and then you have analytical, which is being critical. So
Yeah.
like okay, there's got to be something wrong with my teaching. Like what can I do better, kind of thing.
Right.
Um, so they all play into, I think, your commitment to teaching. How do you experience similarities or differences when you compare your identity and strengths to those of multi-generational Asian communities here in California versus your um, identity as a first generation Asian Texan?
So where we come from is kind of the basis of it because a lot of people in the South, especially, are immigrants from Southeast Asia. And then a lot of people who are in California are immigrants from China, Japan, lots of different Eastern Asian countries. And it's been very interesting to see how my experiences and their experiences are different and also the same. I feel like that as a child of immigrants, no matter really what part of the country you're in, there's really a stronger sense of responsibility and that there's a very high expectation to succeed, that you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, and that the success has to be framed in a very specific way. And if it's not exactly that, like I even had a lot of, I guess, drama with my parents because I chose to be PhD versus
No.
MD. And
Mhm.
somehow to them, even though they're both doctors, they're not the same kind of doctor. When I compare myself to my students, a lot of whom come from multi generational or even mixed race families that are Asian and something else, I feel like there's still a connection to responsibility, but that the monetary part of being successful isn't as pressured. Like, you should do well, you should aspire to do good things, you should uphold that American dream. But the American dream does not have to be that you're a lawyer, you know?
Mhm.
And it's interesting for me to see harmony and belief be used as the same words, but also be such different experiences, even though our ancestors all come from those same roots. And also, too, part of the first generation experience that I find common with other people who are of my age, there's a big sense of like not fitting in because your parents expect one thing, but you're growing up in this culture of America, right? And that sense of not fitting in seems to not be as high up with students and other people whose families have been here for so long or whose families have mixed into the local culture, like Filipino Americans, for example, especially where I live in Santa Maria, or even some of my friends who are from Japanese American families.
Yeah. So, the longer a family has been here, I think whatever part of the world they come from, there's more of that they've assimilated in some way, or and they're
Right.
able to fit in culturally, if not visibly fit in. I think that my family is like third or fourth, depending on how you cut it, generation American, even though both of sides of my family are from the Cape Verde Islands, but none of us speak the language. Most of us haven't been there. We still identify and have food that we eat and all that kind of stuff. But in a lot of ways, we've assimilated into American culture, which is so different when we feel like there are people that come in first generation from our small little country as well. So it's like not a well-known country, which I think,
Yeah.
at least in California, I would guess Thai is probably lesser known than I'm sure you get asked all the time that you're anything but that from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, LA has the biggest population of Thai immigrants outside of Thailand,
Oh,
and
okay.
Dallas is second to that. So I've lived in places where it's like, there are Thai people, but yeah, it's nothing compared to the population of people who immigrate from China or
Hmm.
Japan and things like that. Yeah.
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 All right. Next question. Are there particular strengths from your top 10 that feel especially connected to cultural values you grew up with around success, family, education, community, etc.?
So I talked a little bit earlier about the idea of responsibility as the eldest daughter.
Hmm.
I think that has resonated almost my whole life because, as a child, you're always told that you're going to take care of the elders. It's your job to take care of everyone. And I think that I've let go of that a bit as I've gotten older, but it's still there in the back of my mind that at some point this will be my job. And belief has been really up there. I've been really connected to that because of the idea of success. How that success is has definitely changed over time, but this magical ceiling, I guess if you want to call it that, or checkbox in the top of my mind that says I have to do this to be successful. Maximizer is another one, because I've always felt like I shouldn't waste my time on things that can't help me be successful. And I think that that's part of the immigrant idea to like optimize so that you can accelerate and be a doctor faster or be a lawyer faster or things like that. And then a ranger, because you have to have everything in place to make the goal happen. And I it's been interesting to learn about these things and see how it's framed so much of what I did in high school and college to get me where I am now.
Mhm. Yeah, the arranger also plays into that taking care of things too. It's like you're going to be the one to sort of like arrange, make the arrangements for your elders and things. So added on with that responsibility, I think. And then with belief, those are all executing strengths about doing something, taking action. And if you if your
Yeah.
values with the belief, plus you have the responsibility, plus you have arranger, and then you have discipline on top of it all. You are, yeah, you're going to be someone that feels like you have to be successful and also they have to take care of everybody else as well. I would guess.
Right.
And then on top of it all, having the culture that backs that, it reinforces that mindset.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Have there been times when your strengths were misunderstood or underappreciated due to assumptions about your identity or background?
I think that because I am so analytical about all of the scenarios and situations I'm in before I actually make a move, like I really like to watch what's happening and figure out the best strategy to be successful. I think that that has often been viewed as not having much to say, but also being viewed as the person, the Asian in the room who's just going to go with the flow and who's not going to rock the boat, but will be a really good factory worker and just do the doing. And it's not because I'm trying to, like, I guess, act as a robot. It's because I'm trying to assess what's happening so that I can move optimally. And also, too, on top of that, that I'm a female, and in many of the academic situations I'm in, it's mostly male dominated. And so that idea of just like it's the person in the room who is the mom who's going to get it all done and also who's not going to make a big fuss about it, either because she's Asian or because she's female or because she's both. I think that all of those, while they look like weaknesses up front, are really just because of what I am and what I'm trying to do in everything that comes up in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that I hear so the analytical and input. So input's like soaking in the information. Analytical is questioning the information you're soaking in, kind of understanding what's going on before you speak, which a lot of us could do a little bit more of, including me, given the strengths I have, but can be misinterpreted as like you don't have anything you want to say or say. Do you feel that like you're saying more as the years have gone on, like than when you were new?
I think so. I think it was definitely around the midway point. So, like around year 5 or 6 is when I just really, I guess I got comfortable. I guess I finally stopped assessing who I would upset. And
Hmm.
then I also just started like, I hit my mid 30s and I was just like, this is who I am. I can't change it anymore. I can't constantly strive for this glass ceiling that I can't even define for myself. And
Hmm.
so then I started like acting sooner than I would normally have,
Hmm.
and then more too, rather than just, like, my shoulders all the time and going, "Yeah, that's fine," or "That sounds great. That'll get it done," you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the harmony is still there, but maybe it's dimmed down a bit to make more space for some of these other more vocal strengths like belief and maximizer and now you've assessed things, you know what you're talking about, especially I mean we've talked in other episodes of when it comes to like courses and things that you've taught and curriculum
Right.
and all of that that like you have the now experience to back up whatever you've assessed and heard from other people to like speak out and speak your mind. In what ways did your upbringing, family history, or regional culture encourage or perhaps complicate the development of some of your strengths?
Um, so I think that growing up I grew up Buddhist as well. I didn't list that as part of my identity because it's not really part of what I am now,
Hmm.
but growing up Buddhist was really hard in the South because everyone, you live in the Bible Belt. And so I have had many layers of feeling like I didn't fit in as a child. So I was always the wrong Asian because no one could figure out what kind of Asian I was. I wasn't Chinese. So wasn't they never think it's that you're Thai. Um, so I was always the wrong Asian. I was always not white enough to be in America. I was also, and I still am not a very small person physically, and so I was always the wrong size, and I was always the wrong religion, and I was always not American enough to be in Texas, and so I felt like I was always trying to adapt because of what I saw or what I perceived I needed to be, and it never really worked, and then at the point where I just realized I need to stop doing that, I need to stop, trying to impress people is when I remembered what my core belief was. And I think belief is probably one of the strengths that I kind of mentally gravitate to a lot because it's not that I'm a crazy heretic, I don't think, but I think that I just have this core set of values that I had tried to push away or ignore for a good while because it didn't fit in the places I needed it to.
Mhm.
And then when I was able to embrace it, it made me more comfortable and I stopped being worried about what other people were thinking about and if I was doing well in the lens of my parents, of my culture, and of my friends too.
Yeah, the belief strength often people assume necessitates like religiosity,
Right.
but it doesn't. There are a lot of people who have it that do. I mean, there's a lot of people that are religious in this country, so you're going to find them too. But it's always interesting to talk to someone who's not religious, but still has this core of values that, may or may not be related to any religion that they may have been brought up with or never had if they never had it. But it still guides them. And it's like, but if things go against that in their life and career, that's when like it's, you know, like nails on a
Yeah.
chalkboard kind of thing. And but that can keep them motivated and going and persist through whatever challenges that come up. Were there any strengths you had to rediscover or reframe in order to fully claim them in your academic or professional life?
Harmony, I think, was the biggest one because I think I lived for a good part of my upbringing trying to please people around me, probably as an influence of trying to be the model Asian. And then I realized that it's not just to please the people around you, but it's also to please yourself. So it's a personal sense of harmony and that I have to be selfish. Picking that selfish piece up was really hard for me because
Yeah.
I did not feel like I deserved to do that. So, definitely redefining what harmony is was, a flip, and also acknowledging that change is okay. So, I think that that's definitely part of the belief that the core belief can be adaptable and that the change can, help still move me forward to achieve what I want to achieve.
Yeah. The core of the belief might not change, but that the overall belief could adapt
Yeah.
to where you are.
There's something called we call it a state function, and it's a process that has the same ending, but no matter how many steps it takes to get there. So it's like if you were going on a hike and
Mhm.
you wanted to go up a hill, you could go straight there, or you could take ever so many number of steps. And in the end, you're still going to go straight there, but it
Yeah.
might just take you longer, right? And so I think that I had to remember that it doesn't always have to be the straight path. I can take detours. Things will happen, but I will still end up where I need to end up.
Mhm. This whole program of AGAP, right, is around supporting diverse faculty of diverse identities, diverse strengths to all get to the point where they are promoted or get tenure or retain, right, the RPT. And there's many routes to get to those things. And like
Mhm.
we can't coach you and me and everybody in exactly the same way because we're going to all take different routes and we should take different routes to
Yeah.
that same end goal. So it also relates to strengths too. So just pointing that.
Yeah. Totally.
Um, all right. Next question. How has your identity as a first gen Asian faculty member shaped your experience at Cal Poly, especially in contrast with more multi generational Asian cultural norms you've encountered here?
So I think, firstly, I teach a subject that is notoriously hard, no matter what type of student is in my classroom. But I think that when I was early on in my teaching career, many of the students who identified as Asian would connect with me more because if they came into my office and they were upset about a low score they received, they would say, "Oh, my parents are expecting so much out of me. They moved here to this country and they want me to be a doctor because of all the things they had given up." I would always be able to relate to them because those are the things my parents believed. And now I feel like, especially more recently, I have fewer students who are connecting with me in that way because I am more like their parents. I'm more Americanized like their parents might be if their parents are first generation. And so they seem to not come to me with those types of issues anymore, or at least that I've seen.
So
Um,
you have less first generation
yeah,
students. You have
yeah,
more like second generation students who have first generation parents.
exactly.
Got it.
Right,
So they're a
exactly.
little, are they a little
Yeah,
more free to feel more free to explore other majors? There's a little less pressure than there are for the
definitely.
first gen. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if it's just Cal Poly or not, but I see fewer and fewer Asian students in the sciences, especially in my department. It's okay now to be a liberal arts major as an
Yeah.
Asian American. When if I did that, my mom would just panic. Like
Yeah.
you can make money that way, right? But yeah, I guess it's cool now that yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking to a student today who is very much first generation. She's the first one to go to college. Yeah, the pressure that she's still experiencing. She's in graduate school applying to doctoral programs, and she decided not to do a doctoral program. What do you mean you're not going to go? Like,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
20. By the way, she's like 21. Like she like graduated college early and then like grad
Wow.
school early. So it's just interesting to have had that conversation today and then have this
Yeah.
conversation right now. Um, Okay, can you share a moment when your strengths helped you navigate a challenge or seize an opportunity as an early career faculty member?
So when I first started at Cal Poly, was had very much my head down, and I was really trying to just make it through because I was looking for a stable position. I was focusing on just not rocking the boat and just doing my job. But then I started doing more work with my cultural groups, like the Asian Pacific Islander faculty groups and things like that. So things that were really connecting me to my heritage. And at first it was just for fun for me to meet my community. But then as the years passed, I started investing more in becoming part of executive boards or becoming an officer and things like that. And as a lecturer, you don't have any service time in your contract. Your contract is purely teaching hours, and so I was receiving no compensation for that. And so it was not until probably after we came back from COVID, so 2022, 21, 22, that I finally started reaching out to get release time from my department. And I was always so afraid to ask. Because our contracts were also temporary. And I knew if I asked, then I would just be told, "Oh, you shouldn't even be doing that. You should just be focusing on
Yeah.
teaching. You're taking your time." And I just asked one day and and they said yes. And so now I do get release time, which is awesome. And now the contracts are also changing so that we can officially apply for release time. I don't know which of my 10 that would be related to.
Um, I would say, it might be the belief that had you, finally ask too. Like you believed, you believed in the work that you're doing for service, so you're going to do it anyway. So someone with belief might not still ask; they might just do it and suck up the fact that they're not getting paid. Um, really, right? Would because Harmony doesn't want to rock the boat or ask for anything.
Great,
Um,
great.
developer could be involved in the sense of like, if that release time was to work on things that were impacting students and, what I mean? Like, I think developer and maximizer are two that like are both about kind of making things
Mm,
better. So like whether it's the
yeah.
things that are the struggling you're going to make better as a developer or the things that are doing well, but you want to make even better as a maximizer, you're always interested in like in that too. And then arrangers generally want to be the conductor. They want to have their hands in a lot of different things. So like having
Yeah.
your hands just on teaching when you see all this other stuff happening or not happening, unless, you jump in and they have the responsibility and discipline. I think a lot of them could be, but responsibility being number one, you take on psychological
Mhm.
ownership more than everybody else with any other set of strengths, if that's number one, right? So, like, if you see all this stuff
Right.
going on, especially with your input and analytical, and you've assessed, as you were saying earlier, you have to take action, And finally, at least what you did here, though, is that you now are getting probably not compensated enough, but still compensated somewhat. We were just talking another meeting today talking about just service is like the last thing on everybody's list, so to speak. But that's the thing that can really help make people burn out, I think, too, because it can be endless as well. Like, the
Right.
things that you get asked or have to say yes to. So you have to, you know, choose, obviously. And I'd say
Right.
that might be a struggle for someone with responsibility. Number one is like not raising their hand for more things. Is that something that
Right.
resonates with you?
It's always interesting to me too because as part of our evaluation packet, there's always the question of what contribution are you making to your department? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, you're not being asked to make a contribution in your contract, but you're also being evaluated
Oh,
double expectation. So,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's probably the same question that's on like those of us who do have service as part of our
Mhm.
contract, but they need to have a different evaluation for. All right. Next one around context. So, are there particular contexts like mentoring students, collaborating with colleagues, or engaging in service where your identity and strengths feel especially aligned or powerful?
I think my strength of arranger is always at play here because I am always trying to help people to accomplish their goals. And I'm really good at planning. I really like spreadsheets and I'm really trying to get people to where they need to be. So when I'm mentoring students and they have a question about grad school or like trying to make a connection in the field, I immediately think about, okay, who do I know to help my student get to where they want to be?
Hmm.
And I really, really try hard. I guess I would be a really good matchmaker now that I think. Like, you can go with you, and you can do this and do great things. But yeah, I'm just always thinking about the person I know, and, like, I was looking at my phone the other day, I have phone numbers in there from, like, at least 30 years ago. It must be, the people I haven't talked to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I can't delete that just in case I need them." And so I think that my strengths in these cases are that I can arrange it in such a way that I feel like it's going to have the best outcome, and I do that by way of who I know and who I've seen or met in my past.
So you identified one arranger for sure, but
Mhm.
input is all over this answer too. Input is about collecting not
Yeah.
just things and information, which you probably do too, as I
Right.
remember from our prior
Yeah,
conversation,
we had a
but
conversation
people,
about hoarding.
but people too. You're hoarding people too, but
Yeah.
not you're not hoarding it for your like sometimes hoarding suggests like, oh, it's mine, it's for me.
Right.
No, input is about being resourceful for you, hopefully too, but also for other people. In this case, your students and maybe even colleagues in that matter, for that matter, so your input along with still have three relationship building strengths, developer, relator. So like you're using that input, that information, that social capital as well to help students, right? I even talk to my students they work in student affairs that I'm like, networking is not just for you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope you network for yourself so you can like use that to get a job or whatever. But you're networking so you can gain those connections for your students,
Mhm.
gain the information that comes through those connections for your students.
Mhm.
And that sometimes think gives them a more of a motivation to do the networking that they feel like I don't want to do.
Right.
And anyway, you just hit that on the head for me. And input is really what it is. Like some people with input are like, oh, I don't collect that many things. But then like they'll tell me about their phone. They got people from 30 years ago. Like yeah, there it
Yeah.
goes. Uh,
Right. Right.
Collecting friends.
Yeah.
Are there situations where it feels harder to show up authentically with your strengths, either due to cultural expectations or institutional dynamics?
I think that, I'm always hesitant to ask for more because I am afraid of what people will think.
Yeah.
Uh, that has lessened to some degree, but it's always been a persistent thing. I never wanted to ask for more as a child, especially growing up, because I never wanted people to think that I needed so many things, that I was a needy child, that I was poor, or that,
Mhm.
that because my parents don't speak good English, that I need more assistance. And whatever way, you know? So I've always been afraid to ask for more. Being a lecturer makes it really hard to ask for too much. You can do some, but you can't do too much because you're still on the chopping block if things go south, with budgets and things like that, no matter how long you've been here.
When you did, ask for more in the sense of like the release time, were you thinking also about other lecturers too that either came before you or after you in the sense that, you know, you might be helping more than just yourself if that was something that they would approve?
Yes, I think so, because before I ever asked, I asked around, to see what people were asking for and what their comparable service was. I looked at the union, the CFA first, just to see, what people were doing, and no one, at least lecturers in my department, have really asked, especially in recent times, because they
Hmm.
just do it because they want to do it, and so I just thought, "Well, fine, I will ask," because if no one else has, then no one's going to know an answer.
Yeah.
Uh, and, when I did ask, because no one had asked in recent history, no one did have an answer. And so they were like, well, I guess we'll treat it like what a tenure track
Hmm.
calculation, like the output would be, right? For
Hmm.
service versus time spent. So we just did it that way. But yeah, I
Yeah.
did it to be the first person. Yeah.
Yeah, but now I
Yeah.
also hear the analytical input again in the sense of like the research that you did to, you didn't just ask, you like did some research asking
Right.
around and like
Right.
finding out why, like analytical is asking why or why not. Input's also the curiosity question.
Right.
You wanted to find the answer. So then if it was no, then you'd have that in your in your
Right.
information that to share with other people too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does sound like you were a trailblazer there. I think we have many people will be thanking Nisa, whether they know it or not, when right. And we have this thing where in your first 2 years you have a course reduction. And then after those
Right.
2 years, you go up to regular load. And we took it for granted. They're like, that didn't exist at some point, right? The people that came before me did not have that, and we
Right.
were like, oh, I can't believe I have to teach more in my third year. I'm like, yeah, well, you could have been your first year you were doing that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somebody fought for that before us. And that's what we're, part of what I think our role is
Yeah.
now as more experienced faculty is to help make some of those changes that hopefully will help us but also help the people that come after us too.
Yeah. I wanna add here too that around that same time when I asked for release time for service work is also when I applied for my sabbatical, which is also something no one
Yeah.
has done. Yeah, with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because when the college sends you the notification that you're up for sabbatical, I remember asking around all of my senior lecturers who were above me, "My name's on this list. That means I qualify, but do I actually take it?" And they would always say things that were like, "Well, we never have because we don't have time to do whatever people propose in a sabbatical." And it bugged me so much because I have been doing things that I could make into a project. And and then I did the same thing again where I just asked around for the different colleges to see what other lectures, and the number of people who apply for lecture sabbaticals is so low,
Yeah.
because of the weight of time.
Yeah.
And I put my application in, and I talked about it with my chair, and they seemed fine with it, and so I was really scared, but I submitted it, and then it happened, and I don't know if any other lecturers have applied for sabbatical since then,
Mm.
but I feel really good about knowing that I can be part of the statistic of our department of lecturers doing sabbatical, even if it's like super tiny. It's somebody you can do it.
Yeah, it's not seen as like an impossibility now. Those of us on the tenure track or tenured professors, when we do sabbatical, they're mostly projects that we were probably working on already that have been built into our agendas, and now we have some focused time on it. Versus lecturers might have to like create a project just for the sabbatical. They really didn't have time to create a project before. And now are they really going to finish it in that one quarter? Probably not, So it might be, it's thought of less as an opportunity. But yeah,
Totally.
at some point I want to hear more about what you did on your sabbatical too.
Okay, so I have observed that underrepresented students in science have always struggled with the idea of identity because they don't see a reflection of themselves in the science that they're studying. All they see
Hmm.
are old white men who
Hmm.
come up with all these different values and equations and stuff. So I thought to myself that we really need to have more identity building in the STEM classroom. So I am trying to create a library of resources to make it easier for faculty to insert these lessons that are framed around identity to share with students so that students are aware of underrepresented scientists and their contributions. And it doesn't have to just be racial underrepresentation, it can be gender underrepresentation
Yeah,
because there's
yeah,
this whole thing about women who um, have to work under their husband's names to
yeah,
even
yeah,
succeed in science, right?
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
represent
Some of the discoveries were, in the name of their husband because they had to be, but it was the woman who did it. Well, that's a great
right.
great project. AGAP experience. So, what did being part of the AGAP program mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Being part of the AGET program gave me the ability to understand what I am in a collective way. It gave me words to describe the facets of my personality that I didn't really understand and also that I felt conflicted about. And it helped me meet people who were like me, but also to meet people who were not like me and see how everything can be together, even though we're all different.
Something, but I think what I'm trying to practice myself and teach others is to not make those assumptions. I hear that a lot. Like it's like I didn't have the language to like describe or understand some of these parts of my personality or my strengths. And sometimes they are conflicting, like having analytical and harmony. Analytical wants to question everything. Harmony wants to keep quiet because you don't want to rock the boat. But those are in conflict. So how do they work together? How did your AGAP experience deepen your understanding of your strengths and your identity as a scholar and teacher?
I think it made me realize that I don't have to be just one strength or one form of my identity. It can be all at the same time
Mhm.
because they are all me. And as a teacher, that same thing. Like, I don't have to be the one who's always hard or the one who's always critical of my students. I can be all sorts of things because I am me.
Yeah.
Um, that is the most authentic version of me that I can bring to the classroom.
You could dim down this strength or dim down that strength. And I'm trying to not say that in versus saying like, what other strength can you turn up? Be more of
Mhm.
yourself. In the moment where you're like, "Oh my god, I'm being too much of a hard ass with my response." Like, if you were just responsibility and discipline, ooh boy,
Yeah.
as a teacher, but no, how do I still be very responsible, be very disciplined, but how do I also be a developer and relator in that moment,
Mhm.
right? How do I make it so my student feels that I really care about them and that I'm interested in their development and still holding true to like what I believe around like the rigor of this course.
Right.
They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Now you're being even more Nisa than you were if you're just being a hard ass or just being a
Right.
softie. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have a good combination for if I just took five of them, I took responsibility, discipline, belief, analytical, and maximizer, I'd be like, "Oh, who is this woman? I'm gonna talk to you," right? But then if I have just harmony, developer, relator, and arranger, but those are all of you, and
Yeah.
all of the same person. So
Yeah.
that's why I also think it's important to go beyond the top 5 because 6 through 10 could be, almost as strong as the 5. Were there any moments of affirmation, growth, or connection that especially stood out during the AGAP program?
I feel like we defied a stereotype. We wrote something on a piece of paper and we read it out loud and then we threw it in the middle.
I
Yeah.
thought that was really powerful one too. It's like
And we
symbolic
like,
of like
yeah.
throwing. Do you remember what you wrote down?
I don't. Well,
'Cause you know what? Good, 'cause you got rid of it.
I
It
got
doesn't
rid of it.
exist anymore. It's not
Yeah.
living up here. That was the point.
Yeah.
So if you don't remember,
Yeah.
that's the mission accomplished.
And
It was like paper that dissolves in water that someone had gotten too. So it was like we didn't burn it, right?
I think that that was a really like visual, very
Yeah.
powerful. It's
Yeah.
better than just like throwing it in the trash, right? Like
Yeah.
it's gone. It's literally gone.
Yeah. To the point
So
where
I thought that was
you don't even
awesome
remember
because
what you
like
wrote. I don't remember what I wrote either. And
exactly.
that hope I hope that was the case for many. I had talked to people, at the time that mentioned that
Mhm.
too. So
And
okay.
it wasn't just like a moment where it was good like as cathartic for the self, but it was also a good reminder that like we're all these different people that come together and we don't know what other people are carrying
Yeah,
until they say it out loud, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And then you're kind of surprised sometimes when you hear what people are saying. And
Especially people who you're, like, seeing as, like, these uber accomplished faculty and, like but then they're still dealing with these demons
Mhm.
from a long time ago, which I think, is sadly not rare for successful people too. Advice and wisdom. What advice would you offer to other early career faculty who share your background or have similar strengths?
I would share that if you feel what you are enduring is cultural trauma and that you're trying to process it, that cultural trauma can be absorbed and it can be transformed at the same time. It's part of who you are and who made you what you are, but it's also not going to control you for the rest of your life. Strengths have shadows, and so do aspects of cultural upbringing.
Mhm.
So there's always a good to it, but there's always going to be a part to it too. And that just makes you what you are. And I
Yeah.
think that that's probably the biggest thing I would share out to anyone who's in a similar boat as I am.
Yeah, that's really important advice, and I think also, like, something it's reminding me too, it's helpful to, like, learn that for yourself, but also to have the opportunity to have people to talk about that with, like a coach or people in the program at the same time. So, like, if you were just doing coaching or, just learning about your culturally informed strengths, but not having the coaching or the connections with others, you might have not processed it in the same way. So I think, yeah, learning it, but then having the opportunity to process it out loud with people who are caring and, trained not to like judge based on their identity and strengths, or even if they have similar identities and strengths, doesn't mean you're going to have the same experience with that
Yeah.
identity or strengths too. Are there any affirmations, values, or practices that help you stay grounded in both your strengths and your cultural identity?
Growing up as a Buddhist, there's always this idea of a temporary state, that nothing is ever permanent, that life is always, well, being recycled as reincarnation, but that everything is temporary. And so I think that that is something that mindfulness really helps me connect with, that no matter how hard it is right now, it is always temporary and that it will pass, whether to be worse or to be better, hopefully better, but
Yeah.
it will pass. And that makes me feel better, but also makes me value the time that I have at the moment. And
Even the positive things, knowing that those are also temporary, so you don't take them for granted or you don't, enjoy the moment, I think is also like the flip side of that too, which I,
right,
I love.
yeah. And then the other thing that I try to always keep in mind, I immediately thought of this quote from a movie. So, have you seen Coco? It focuses on like Dia de los Muertos
Mhm.
and the idea of that your ancestors are still around, but in like ghost form. And there's this quote in the movie from one of the characters that says, "When there's no one left in the living world who remembers you, you disappear from this world." And we call it the final death. I did think about it a whole lot before because I really want to make sure that my legacy is something that definitely is keeps me grounded.
I'm someone who has lots of my deceased relatives on my computer screen. I have all my like
Hmm.
older aunts, my great aunts over there too, and I'm like, oh my god, after my generation's gone, no, who's going to remember them? But okay,
Yeah.
closing reflections. What are you most proud of right now in your journey as a scholar, teacher, or leader?
I think I'm most proud of the impacts that I am making. And I know those impacts are true because of student feedback. So I guess it's kind of circling around to where we first started in our
Hmm.
conversation that hearing feedback is really important for me. But I do always have students who come back, whether it's within the quarter or a few years later, and talk to me about the impacts that I've made in their lives and just seeing that. I think as an educator, you see the impacts on paper because you see your students actively learning. They can rationalize a problem, they can answer a question with what you've given them. But then seeing how they apply that learning out there in the world, in their real life, because of the contributions you've made, the connections you've made for them, whether they're like academic connection, like personal connections or content connections, seeing how that has happened and played out is probably the most rewarding thing. And all of it is tied to me being who I am and being proud of who I am. So, yeah.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with me too.
Yeah.
I get to see a lot of my students work on campus, or former students, so I get to see them in action, and I'm lucky enough that many of them will share with me the impact that I've had. So yeah, the feedback is important. So students of any institute out there, tell your professors and teachers and mentors what you've done for them, because that is what keeps us going. Last question. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Something we didn't ask about but feels important to say?
I have been thinking about, since you brought this idea to me to have this episode for your podcast, about how race and strengths have been interplaying a whole bunch, and I've been thinking so much about cultural appropriation and how that rolls into what we believe, especially within our strengths. So with Asian culture, we always talk about food a whole bunch because food is really what connects us. There's so much overlap, there's so much influence and things like that. But we get really upset when a person who's not Asian tries to do something else with what we have or what we had been doing for centuries, right? And so, like, is that part of our responsibility to be authentically Asian? Should we be okay with how things evolve and change as we evolve as people? What kind of social, cultural changes can happen or should happen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good question because it's like I'm reminded of that phrase like imitation is the, best form of flattery, but then
right.
cultural appropriation is like capitalizing on, I think of someone like taking something and then making a whole bunch of money off of it and then not contributing any of that back to the originators. This feels wrong,
Right.
obviously, but
Yeah, yeah, and
maybe there's
I get
appropriate
mad at.
way like, maybe there
Mhm.
are some appropriate ways of collaborating with cultures to, like, bring whatever they have to the masses. That's an interesting question. Maybe we'll have an
Yeah,
episode on cultural appropriation because I'm sure that hits on pretty much every other culture as well in some way,
totally.
shape, or form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, thank you so much, Nisa. It is always great to see you and have you as a guest on this
Thank
podcast.
you.
So we will, I'm sure, see you again someday. Thank you for listening to the Culturally Informed Strengths podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast. To learn more about my work, workshops, coaching, and the culturally informed strengths approach, visit www.thestrengthsprofessor.com. Until next time, bring your authentic Clifton strengths, appreciate differences, and maximize your potential. This podcast is not affiliated with Gallup, and the content of the podcast has not been approved, sanctioned, or endorsed by Gallup in any way. Any opinions, views, findings, conclusions, recommendations, and interpretations of Clifton Strengths results are solely those of the hosts and guests of the podcast and do not represent the views of Gallup. Gallup, Clifton Strengths, and the 34 Clifton Strengths theme names are trademarks of Gallup Inc., all rights reserved.